So thank you for joining me today. It's Jim Musco. I'm the industry principal for retail at Zebra. I have a guest with me today, Brian Minnix. He's the CIO from Rack Room Shoes. And today we're just going to have a conversation about retail and retail problem solving and how we think about going after it. So, one of the things as retailers, we talk a lot about friction. We talk about where does it exist in the store. We think and talk about ways to reduce it. And because our stores are so public and customers, it's our front and forward placement as retailers, the frictions that show up for the customer are things that are most apparent when you walk into the store. That's why I lean on things like the Zebra annual global shopper study. It helps me understand our customers' perspective, our colleagues' point of view, and what the decision makers are thinking. When we talk about media, the media tends to cover the friction points that our stores and customers experience from the customer perspective, right? When you walk into a store, you feel it's short-staffed. Maybe the shelves are empty when you're in there looking for something. Something's locked up that you really want to touch or feel and get your hands on. Lately in the news, we've been regrouping on self-checkout. And, Brian, you and I both know that the best way to address customer friction points in our stores and in our business is to identify where they're happening each day. So I thought it might be a good way to start this conversation if you kind of talk to us about how you think about eliminating these frictions and how you go about it in your role at Rack Room Shoes.
Oh, great kickoff, Jim. Thank you. I joined Rack Room about 6 years ago. And the challenge I got straight out of the gate from our CEO is to not only modernize our solutions, enterprise-wide, but to focus on modernizing the solution in the stores and really focused on friction points. So I, like any other new person joining a company, went and met with every functional area and said, tell me what we're doing great. Tell me where we have opportunities. Let's talk about friction points and some things we can work on together to solve some current issues that we're seeing. So I'll focus in on the store side of things. But in the stores, the first meeting with the stores was very interesting. They pointed out 49 friction points or issues that we have that we could solve. And we went about it that way for a couple of weeks. And then we sat back and said, well, you know what, that's interesting because if you look at the platform we have, maybe we're asking the wrong question. So we backed up and asked ourselves a different question. And the question was, what do we want to look like in 4 or 5 years? And what do we want that customer and associate experience to be in 4 or 5 years? And based on that, Jim, we put together a list of things that we wanted to work on, and that off to the races we went.
Yeah. Only 49 friction points. That's pretty impressive.
You know what? I think they were being nice at the time. They were probably more like 87. But I was new, so they were being nice, Jim.
They were going easy on you, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting assignment to go after. How do you solve for these experiences in the store, right? You could have been assigned, go improve productivity specifically. You could have been told, find revenue, make inventory more accurate. There's a lot of things that you could have been told and you could have taken on, but I like the approach that you took to get started and try to get your arms around how to tackle these problems. There's so many technologies that can help across that space. Where did you start?
Yeah, that's a good question because we do have a pretty robust project management process, and we meet with the business once a quarter to talk about their needs by function. And then the senior leaders get together and discuss how we're going to tackle those, quite honestly, by prioritization. So what's good about the Rack Room executive team, quite honestly, is I'm not just working with the store associates or the store associates leader. I'm working with all the leaders. But when you think about it, a merchant cares about customers as well. Our marketing team cares about customers as well. So we really focus in as an executive group on things we could do better to create a better customer and associate experience. So one of the things that was evident to us starting out is that we had a lot of stuff that you had to go to the back room to do. Fulfill orders, do BOPUS orders, print signs. So our associates really tether either to the front office up at the point of sale stations or to the back office. So that was the first thing we identified is how do we keep them out on the floor doing their tasks, but also engaging with the customers as well. So that was a challenge that we narrowed it down to is, hey, let's tackle this.
Yeah, that is a great conundrum for us as retailers, isn't it? That you have to want to provide exceptional customer service, but you have to have the store ready and shoppable. It's particularly important in the shoe business. I have a little shoe experience from my Macy's days, and it's a complex business, much more so than people think about who are just shoe shoppers walking in. Those of us who are close to the business understand that. And I like your approach of, holistically including everyone across the retail spectrum, right? Everybody across the board, we're there to service the customer and we're there to give the best brand experience we can. But, it's a challenge for us to figure out how to attack these things. And I think a change management mindset matters. It's not just specific targeted solutioning or specific technologies that you want to deploy for technology's sake. I think operational execution is important and understanding how to get that colleague out of the back and onto the front. So how did you approach that? How did you decide to go after that specific friction point?
Basically, that was one of those 47 things. A multitude of those, quite honestly, was continuing having to go back to the back room to do their work, quite honestly. So that kept them off the floor, which degraded customer service. So when we sat down and talked about it, we did start to get technical at that point. So you have to think about, hardware, software, and what it means and how it works together, quite honestly. So we did look at that. We hadn't invested from a technology standpoint in our stores in a while. So we really took a holistic approach. We didn't say, hey, this one thing's going to be it. It was a multitude of things. So I'll walk through those, briefly, and then we can dig in on a couple of them if you like. So basically, we looked at it first as, hey, if you have a customer queued up in the line, going through the checkout process, what does that look like and how could that be better? So we were on some old software that had been heavily customized at the time. So we had been on an upgrade path, and what we decided is to stop that. Let's don't go the upgrade path. We need a re-implementation of software, and we needed to update, hardware and operational systems as well. We weren't even on Windows 10 at the time. We did a hardware refresh, not only for point of sale, but the pin pad. We did a software update on our pin pad software and our point of sale software. And we did some operational upgrades as well to the point of sale. So that project really took us probably all in all about 2 years to do. But the goal was, how do we make that process smoother for the customer? How do we make it better for the associate? And can we give the associate, can we arm them with more information to service the customer at point of sale? So that was the first group of technology and software and processes that we tried to tackle. The second set was really is, how do you take all that back office, functionality and the operations of that and bring it onto the floor? How do you do that? And you really do it through mobile, quite honestly. So we had already been partnering with Zebra at the time, and we'd already had task management tool, which in and of itself was a transformation for us years ago, quite honestly. But we did upgrade that as well. And we basically went from way back when of just doing emails and basically sticky notes, all over the store to having a task management tool. The problem with our task management tool, you were still tethered to the devices, right? So we basically partnered with Zebra and said, hey, how do we bring this out on the floor? So Zebra has some mobile devices or mobile computers or however you'd like to talk about them. And we looked at those, and we did look at others as well on what is the best device, for the associates to do their job and to stay out on the floor. So we did end up with a Zebra mobile computing device, or a handheld, if you will. So that was the start of it, is selecting the hardware. Once we did that, quite honestly, from a software side, we had pretty much the applications you needed to do the day-to-day job, quite honestly, but we hadn't updated them in a while either, Jim. So we really had to rewrite all those applications, refresh some of the ones that we were using with our partners, such as yourself, like task management. So we really upgraded the ones that were external and rebuilt the ones internal. So we not only have the hardware now, but we also had the software to really drive them out to work with the customers. What we learned fairly quickly on that is, well, that's great. So you got that part done, but when you go to print a label or you go to print a sign, you still got to go to the back room because that's where the printer is. So we said, hey, you know what? We need mobile printers as well. So we went down the road of the handheld device plus mobile printers in the stores as well, which created another conversation around, well, okay, now we got these, people can walk around with those in their hands. So we do have a little cart that we put these on and they can cruise around the store if they're doing big work. If they're doing small work, we do have a belt printer as well that you can clip on and just go. So those are probably the major pieces that we kind of worked through. I mean, it was amazing kind of walking through the journey, Jim.
Wow. What a great recap of an approach that every retailer has to go through at some point. I'm sure there were a lot of decisions to make along the way. I'm sure there was a lot of deep conversation about this type of investment. What was the aha moment that you landed on as like, all right, this is the thing, and this is what we're going to go after, and these are the tasks or the workflows that we're going to load on that thing?
Yeah, that's always interesting because the ideation part of it and then the execution and then the live event, it always looks different, right, Jim? Always looks different. So
it's never the same conversation. And I think you have to manage it in our roles based on, what the merchant knows about what's going on and what they think about the floor versus what the store operator knows versus what the colleague is telling you.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? I'd first say that the organization, did not see this as a technology project. They seen it as an enterprise-wide project. So that right there, that's the first obstacle sometimes. If sometimes internal people see it as a technology project, sometimes it's an option, right? It's, well, the technology team's working on that. That's not what this was. And quite honestly, that happened fairly naturally in our culture at Rack Room. That's not something I would pat myself on the back and say that's what Brian Minnix did. It's really the organization got behind, hey, we need to refresh our stores and we need to service our customers. So it was interesting. There was a few bumps in the road. I can mention a few of those. There was a few bumps in the road because we were actually doing some of this work during COVID. I mean, if you remember at the time, there was pretty significant changes in the supply chain during COVID. So you think about hardware and getting some of these devices in a timely manner. It was touch and go on a few of our go lives, but I would probably say one of the recipes for our success company wide, quite honestly, is the closer relationship that we have with store operations. And we did go about it as this is a process. This is a process that the stores and the associates do. And how does the technology follow that? So we have a pretty close relationship. We have some great folks over there that really thinks about things at a detailed level. And the initial business specifications that we got were really good. We didn't have a lot of changes. They were really good. We were able to build out the solutions and bingo, we had some magic.
I love that description. A big advocate in my past life and what I see in my new role at Zebra is that connection between the technology team and the store operators is critical. And it helps drive out what problem are we trying to solve. And you're spot on. Sometimes you bump up against, well, the tech guy just wants to deploy tech, right? And that's what he wants to do. So, okay. But the way you describe the entirety of Rack Room gets on board with, hey, this is brand improvement exercise. I'd love to dig in a little bit. You described the great relationship you have with the store operators. How did you collect colleague or frontline associate feedback as a validation point along the way?
Yeah, that's another really good question, Jim. The way we went through it is we did go through a pretty involved pilot process where we put a few out there in a few stores, learned from it and made some tweaks before we did a rollout. So that was invaluable, quite honestly, because we were able to make the necessary small changes to work out any, we did it to create less friction, but when you're putting in new processes, sometimes you create friction as well. So we did go through that with some pilot stores, learned a lot. And for the pilot store, quite honestly, we did a conference room pilot as well, which really helped. So we try to clear out as much as possible, and then we put it out in a couple of stores and really work with them. Then we created the rollout schedule once we had things to a place where we thought we were in a good place. I will tell one little story though that was kind of interesting because I was still fairly new at the time when we started this process, and you made mention of the technology team and the operational team working strong together. But I'll never forget I was in this meeting, and I forget how many people, it was a dozen or so people, I guess. And I was still fairly new, so I didn't really know who did what and who was in what function. So I ended up meeting, and I was talking to one of my direct reports later, and I mentioned that one of the store operations people, I mentioned them by name, and I'm like, man, I'm so happy to have them on our team. And the person looked at me and was like, what do you mean, the rack room team? I'm like, no, the technology team. They're like, they're not on the technology team. They're on the operations team. I'm like, well, there you go. So there again, we get in a room and you really couldn't tell, who represented what function. Everybody's really, knocking it out of the park on what we're going to do to create a great customer and associate experience.
I love the way you're sharing this. I love the description. You're sharing a optimum way to go about solving these problems and understanding the friction points. I also like the way you described the pilot, right? You didn't just do it centrally and say, this is what it is. You gave it an opportunity to stretch and see what you learned and then adjust it accordingly. So that's good. How long did that take for you to get comfortable that we're at a pilot and we're into deployment?
Not long. It was probably, our pilot was probably about 6 weeks. Our pilot in the stores were probably around 4 weeks. And then we started rolling out. Now, our rollout period was a little longer because we decided, we were using a third party to help us with the rollout of some of these technologies. But what we decided early on that we're going to start out small with a couple of stores, there again, tweak the process of the rollout because there again, the hardware and the software could work, but the way you install it and the way you get it up and running in the store, sometimes you run into some kinks, right? So what we did, we picked a few stores. Our people in the office actually flew to those locations. We picked one by region, and we flew to those destinations and made sure that first one was done properly with the right people on site to fix any issues. Once we did that, we started the rollout by geographic region.
I love it. So how have you gone about collecting that continuous loop of feedback and adjustment through this process? So now let's fast forward a little. You've hurdled getting this out there into the stores. I guess there's two key questions here, and you can answer them in whatever order you're comfortable. Have the customers seen and shared, hey, things are better? And have the colleagues done the same? So I'd be curious to know how you're collecting that feedback or what you're hearing.
You know what? I don't know if we've gotten direct customer feedback, but I'd probably say our stores are easier to shop because of it. So we typically get the feedback when things aren't going well. We don't always get the feedback when things are going good. It's typical for the IT department. But I'd probably say what was the point for me, and I remember this, we're privately owned by Deichmann Group in Germany. I came over for a visit, and I didn't visit the stores with them on this particular occasion, but it was the owner and his son. And they were in the stores, and you had an associate with the handheld device walking our owner's son through it. His response to that when he got back to the office is, wow, whatever you've done with these mobile devices, that store associates sure are happy. They're really excited about it. So there's no bigger compliment than the people that are using the technology to like it and feel like it helps them get their job done.
I spot on. It is. And so, probably garners to the successful implementation when the colleague is comfortable with it. And you know what? We all know that customers sense that, right? They know that, hey, this thing isn't a burden. It's actually helping. And the customer probably feels that as well. Sounds like you've had a really super experience here. It's gone really well. Are there any other challenges or friction points that you think you want to try and take on in the stores because you've had success in this space? Is there something new or different, or what's bugging you that you have to solve?
Well, you could call it good news or bad news, Jim. I call it good news. So my boss would always say, Minnix, your job used to be easy. Now it's going to be difficult. I'm like, well, why is that? He's like, well, you used to be able to honestly answer the question, I can't help you because we can't do anything about it. Now you can't say that because with a mobile device in the hands of our associate, pretty much anything is possible. And that's true. I would say there's lots of opportunities. I'll share one on an item that we did not go live with the box is we were using a third party supplier to help us do physical inventory, which is pretty typical in the retail space. Yeah, we did have some physical inventory applications on our old devices, but quite honestly, they weren't probably good enough to do what we really needed to do, particularly in our larger stores. So that was one of the challenges. Okay, great. Now we have this mobile handheld computer. When are you going to tackle physical inventory? Because now we can. So happy to report that went from a challenge to something we've implemented. And this year we'll be doing 100% of our physical inventories on our own. And there again, great work done by the store associate people and our corporate operations staff, store operations staff to get those requirements down, let us do the build properly and do the test. But the only challenge we've seen in that is we got them out there. It's the little things sometimes you don't always think about because our handheld devices right now are things you can just slip in your pocket. We try to keep it pretty casual. We did learn pretty quick that, hey, you're going to need to get that little trigger accessory because it gets pretty hard doing it like this with a trigger. It's much easier. So we did go back and buy some triggers for the stores and made it even better.
There's always something that you learn. So speaking of that, I think you've described a great approach, a great solution. Clearly, as a CIO, you led this initiative, you met the charter that the CEO gave to you. And you talk about that balance across the organization, especially between ops and tech. Knowing all that and knowing what you've learned along the way, is there anything you would do differently? Is there something you're just like anxious to hey, the next time we do one of these, I want to do it because we learned X, Y, and Z last time? Anything like that pop to mind?
Yeah, and I can only think of a positive one. I'm trying to have some balance and think of some positive and negatives, but it was one that was probably a roadblock before that ended up opening up opportunities to be better if we move forward, quite honestly. And it was probably the way we communicated, with our business community. Sometimes you have this dynamic friction between business and IT, and it's about, hey, we want to do something and you don't let us do it, and so you get that, right? What we learned during this, and I thought we all did a better job, quite honestly, is just being more, open and honest and a little bit transparent about the whys. And I'll give you one example. We had heavily customized, our point of sale solution. So it was kind of interesting. So when I came in, there was a lot of negativity towards our point of sale solution. And come to find out with some deeper digging, a lot of the negativity is what we had done to ourselves. Quite honestly, we had allowed ourselves to customize a solution so much it was hard to upgrade, quite honestly. And it's kind of interesting when you start peeling back the onion on that. A lot of people, if you're not careful, starts pointing fingers at a lot of other groups, whether we point the finger at the solution provider, whether we point the finger at the technology department, whether we point the finger at the business. And we all have our own to own in that process. But what I tell you this is we did not, and I'll put it on ourselves as technologists, we did not do a good job of explaining to the business why it was in the business best interest to go vanilla and do out of the box versus customization. We had to do a lot better job of explaining that and explaining what it meant down the road as far as upgrade or what it meant as far as continued cost as well, whether it was to put it in or to maintain it. So I thought we did a lot better job at putting that on the table and explaining it. And it was kind of funny. Some of my team at the time was saying, I don't know why you're saying all that because I don't think they care. And I'm like, well, no, they do care. We haven't given them the opportunity to care because we haven't explained it. And when I explained it one day, I'll never forget one of the people in the business said, I never knew that. Nobody ever really said. So thank you so much for sharing that with me because, we were all getting in our own way. So I would say to the group is just be transparent and open about why things are the way they are and work together. And there again, that don't mean the answer is just no. The answer is, well, maybe not like that. How about like this or like this? So come up with some options that helps the business get close versus just saying, no, that's a customization. We can't do that. let's be a little bit more creative about, because there are different ways to configure things without customization. And we need to get better about that, Jim. And I think we did in the process.
I love that. I love that learning. I love that mindset. You're right. Every retailer, our transaction set is unique, right? And if you take a step back and you think about it, we're collecting data on the product. We're capturing that data in such a way that we can use it and leverage it. And then we're collecting money at the end. So, and now we don't even print a receipt, or at least for the most part, we don't print a receipt. We used to,
Correct.
so that was the way the transaction worked. It's funny that you bring up that communication and transparency, because it's part of any tech implementation approach, is to share with your community, your user community, and your partners across the business. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here's why we're going about it the way we are. And here's what you're going to net out of it along the way. And I think what you've described there is a really great way to approach these types of implementations, whether it's mobility, printing, which I appreciate you sharing your stories about our Zebra products in your space. But I also appreciate the fact that you shared things from a CIO perspective along the way about how to partner with the teams to deliver a great solution. Wrapping up here, any final thoughts, anything that, geez, I wish Jim had asked me this question along the way, or anything else you want to point out? Or
Yeah, I'll probably share one more thing because, like I said, the journey hadn't ended. The possibilities are endless, and we're continuing to move forward on our roadmap. But I would say this, thanks for the mention of me mentioning you. But in the end, we can't do it ourselves. Quite honestly, we need our partners. And there again, I would encourage people that are listening to this just to pick partners you can be partners with. There are some transactional things that you have to get done. I get that. I understand that. But when you pick true partners to try to work on solutions together, that's when you really get some traction and make a difference. I'll give the example. So we did a lot of this work. We did partner with Zebra. One example, I could give you many, but we did partner with Zebra on task management. We did partner with Zebra on some of the hardware. But where that led us, quite honestly, to what's next. And one of the things that was what's next was workforce management. You know what? That's one of the things that our associates were giving us feedback. Hey, you guys are modernizing, but we're not quite modern on how we do scheduling and how we share scheduling and how we do schedule swapping. So if you say, let's get modern, how about a WFM solution? So we did reach out, and I'll be totally transparent. We did reach out to multiple providers. And quite honestly, we picked Zebra's workforce management really for two major reasons. There could be a lot more, but let's just stick to two because I know we're limited on time, Jim. Two things. One is it works really well with our task management tool. It weaves those things together, which in the technology world, having things integrated and working together is a big deal, right? So that was the first thing. It really worked together. Secondly, kind of picking up on what I said earlier, we had a great partner. We had a great partner that we felt very comfortable with, that knew would be there with us, throughout this. We knew this was not going to be an easy project, quite honestly. So you want to pick a partner that's going to be there with you along the way. We feel like we have. So we're in the middle of that right now. We're getting through that, and we hope to go live with that next year. But we're well on our way. We're in the build right now, and we're really pleased with where we're at. And not only do we have the stores excited about it, we got legal excited about it for the compliant reasons, and we got HR excited about it as well. So this is a multi-function win for us, and I can hardly wait to roll that out like we did point of sale and the mobile computing as well.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I loved this conversation today, and I love how we kind of ended it on, I kind of started with that survey, the annual shopper survey we do. And a big piece of that is colleague feedback. And what you shared here at the end is, hey, colleagues told us, here's a pain point we'd love for you to solve for. We're giving a good portion of our week to you, Rack Room Shoes. It would be great if you made it easier for me to organize that and manage it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how 2025 goes in that regard. Of course, we're all hopeful that sales are going to skyrocket and costs are going to go down and tech is going to be easier to deploy. Any parting thoughts or comments on our way out? Or
Thanks, Jim.
I think
Appreciate
it's a
your
wrap.
time today. Thank
Brian,
you.
thank you very much.
Appreciate the partnership.
Yeah, love it. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.